I'm David Lombardo, and you're listening to WCNY's The Capitol Press Room. A high-profile bill approved at the end of the legislative session imposing a one-year moratorium on the licensing of new data centers also included language requiring a report on the public funds received by data centers, including state and local incentives, with the information compiled by state economic development officials and the obscure authority's budget office. So we checked in with the ABO's director, Josh Norkin, to discuss this potential new role and the broader issue of public subsidies for data centers.
This seems new for the ABO. I think since legislation creating the ABO, was brought online, 20 years ago, there have not been a sort of series of corresponding studies or tasks that have been assigned to the ABO. And so this might be unique. And, anytime the ABO gets mentioned in a piece of legislation, we get excited. Somebody knows we're out there. To answer your question, this is something new for us.
And what about the data itself, especially as it pertains to local incentives? Is that information that you will have readily available, or is this new stuff that you're going to have to collect?
This is probably new stuff that we'll have to collect. It's one of those things where there is certain information available in Paris, which is the public reporting system that all of the public authorities have to report annual financial information into, organizational information, things for public transparency. IDAs also have to report in project-level data, and that includes, the amount of tax exemptions or benefits that might be being provided to any individual project, and to make sure that whatever information that we have is accurate in order to build a report off of it. It's something that we probably at some point will need to get directly from the IDAs. The self-reported information in Paris sometimes is inaccurate, but I think also too for us, it's probably something where we're going to want to see or look at the project relevant data and the documentation that they are using in order to justify giving the project the tax benefits. And sometimes that information is available online, but I think for us and to meet our standards, we probably would want to have a conversation directly with the IDA.
And the language in this bill spells out some of the incentives, including but not limited to payments in lieu of tax arrangements, those are those pilot deals, sales and use tax incentives, property tax incentives, mortgage recording tax incentives, as well as real estate transfer tax incentives. Are you getting any of those types of incentives as part of your existing reporting requirements?
Yes, most of it's reported into Paris already now. Project documentation for some of these things is available online on their website. There are posting requirements for transparency purposes that most of the IDAs comply with. So yes, that information is out there and available publicly. I don't think it's something that the IDAs would need to, where they would need to recreate any documentation. But it is for us probably something where we're going to want to see some of the original documentation. There may be things that are lagging in Paris because of the reporting timelines and when information needs to be reported that we might need to go back and verify individually with the individual IDAs.
There is a recent history of data centers getting millions of dollars in incentives from IDAs, most recently in Rockland County, $77 million subsidy package. So given that backdrop and some of the ongoing projects like in Genesee County, is this something that is already on your radar and separate and apart from what requirements you might have as legislation that may or may not get signed? Are you already doing stuff in the space or responding to this type of subsidy?
I don't know that we're already doing something in this space. I think the ABO is somewhat agnostic when it comes to data centers. I mean, it is not part of our mission or really what we do. The connection that sort of binds us to the larger data center conversation is the public authority element of this and the fact that most of these deals are being done at the IDA level. And so I think over the past, couple of months, we have had a number of questions from stakeholders and legislators and people who are interested in the larger data center issue. But I think one of the things that has been a reoccurring theme is just the sheer dollar amount that these IDAs are providing to data centers. And if you look at that JP Morgan deal that you mentioned, all of that $77 million, or approximately $77 million, are sales tax breaks. Typically, the bread and butter of IDAs are property tax breaks to encourage, redevelopment of a parcel of land, and you may get some, sales tax and other tax breaks, included in that larger package. But this J.P. Morgan data center already existed, and so it is purely a state and local sales tax break. And so I think one thing that we have heard as a concern from a number of people is just that $40 million in state sales tax money that's going to that project, the return on the benefit, if you look at the cost-benefit analysis, the state's only expected to get about $7 million of that money back over the course of the deal. The question that we've heard is, why does the law allow for a local authority to provide such a large sum in state sales tax money without, any sort of state insight or representation in providing the tax break?
Well, another thing I learned from this experience in Rockland County was that the IDAs make commissions on their deals, and I was curious whether that raises any sort of fiduciary issues for the IDA in terms of who are they looking out for? Is it the region, or is it their own well-being as an organization? Because in the case of this J.P. Morgan Chase data center, it brought in, I think, at least $2 million in commissions. So is that something that is getting your attention, either as it pertains to the future of data centers or just this broader concern about how they use economic development incentives?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the ABO has looked at this particular issue too closely. If somebody in the past has, I'm not particularly familiar with it. I do know, the people I think you'd want to talk to about this are Reinvent Albany. I think this is...
I'm looking at their webpage right now, Josh.
Okay. So they do the perverse incentive. They've come up with a very clever name to talk about this. Yeah, it's an interesting place for a policy discussion, right? And this is how I think a lot of the IDAs, operate, and they sustain themselves. A lot of it's fees based on deals. And, if you talk to Reinvent Albany, obviously they've got a big issue with that. I think if you talk to the IDAs, they're going to tell you that this is something where this is how they generate money to pay for staff.
Right, but it seems like a backwards system, because if the amount that they can generate for staff is based on the amount that they can give away, it seems to remove an incentive to try to fight for a better deal. It seems to call into question their fiduciary role as gatekeepers of taxpayer money.
Are you reading that directly from the report?
The word fiduciary is not in that press release they put out. That's just one I picked up from talking to you.
In terms of IDA finances and just how some of the deals are operating in this space, it's a perfectly fair question, I think, that Reinvent Albany is posing here. It's just not one that we have spent a lot of time looking at. And, as far as I know, I actually don't think we've got any guidance on fees. But one thing you can do if you're interested and you wanted to go to your local IDA's website, they should have a fee schedule up telling you exactly how much you would be charged if you were going to, conduct a deal with them, or even just to seek a tax incentive. Typically, they charge, some amount to even apply for the tax benefit. All of that stuff you should be able to find on their website, and website transparency is something that we do.
And I was going to say, and if it's not on that website, I'm going to give you a call, and that way you can ding them in your next report.
Yes, or you can go online and fill out the online complaint form,
which you can find at abo.ny.gov.
Thank you.
That was more of a question, but I'm glad I got it right. Well, we've been speaking with Josh Norkin. He's the director of the State Authority's Budget Office. Josh, thanks for visiting us.
Thanks for having me.
Support for the Capitol Press Room is provided by New York State United Teachers, a statewide union of nearly 700,000 professionals in education and healthcare.